We're back. Holy shit. Welcome back to the What's Bruin podcast, season 2, episode 5. My name is Matt, and I'm here joined by my co-host Dave. What's going on today, Dave?
Not a whole lot, not a whole lot. Today is September the 23rd, so we're inching ever closer to the start of the NHL season, which will be taking place on the 2nd of October, just about a week and a half to go. So I'm looking forward to that. What's going on with you?
Not a whole lot. Just been busy with school, but yeah, getting excited for the regular season to start up here. The preseason's been going for a good probably week and a half now. So it's been fun to watch some hockey games, even though it's been a little bit sloppy. But it's interesting to see some guys that you're kind of interested to see where they're at, especially for the Bruins, of course, with a lot of young guys in the lineup. Um, yeah, so it's been fun. But I can't wait for the regular season to start, of course. Today, in today's episode, since we already did our preview podcast in the first four of the season, today I think we'll just be having a more standard podcast, going over some headlines from the around the league for the last week and a half since we last recorded. So then we'll be giving a brief update on the Bruins and what they've been up to so far in this preseason, and then give some updates on the podcast moving forward into the season. So, without further ado, Dave, let's hop into some of these headlines. First up, of course, the preseason has been rolling, like we said, 9 days till the regular season, which is exciting. But luckily, we'll be having a regular season. And we will also be having a regular season for the next 3 years, as the Players Association actually decided to or not to reopen the CBA negotiations, which guarantees, like I said, 3 more years of playing without a lockout, and they can um, negotiate with the league throughout this time, and hopefully extend or find a new CBA in that time, so that even after the 3 years are up, we also don't get that lockout that we all desperately do not want, and that way we can keep talking on this podcast throughout the NHL and keep enjoying hockey at night. So, any thoughts on the CBA, Dave?
I mean, obviously, it's a good thing. It's what I'm assuming everyone wanted. No one likes the lockout, and of course, knowing that we have the peace of mind, knowing that that's not going to happen for the next 3 years is obviously a good thing. I think there was some worry that a lockout may be coming
Mm.
due to all the way that just money's being thrown around now, and the way that players are demanding money, and the way salary happens, and the way people get paid in the NHL is a lot different now. So I think for some people they thought that a lockout was looming, but obviously now we know that at least for the next 3 years we'll be enjoying full seasons of NHL hockey.
Yeah, that should be great because there's a lot of good talent. Speaking of getting paid, let's hop in a little bit into these RFAs. Some still lingering, some have actually signed. So to start off, first off with a couple of the guys that still are yet to sign, we still have players on the board such as Patrick Laine and Kyle Connor from the Winnipeg Jets. We also have Mikko Rantanen from the Colorado Avalanche and Matthew Tkachuk from the Calgary Flames, to name a few. From what I've heard Line and Rantanen are not close, which surprises me about Rantanen just because knowing how much cap space Colorado has and not being able to sign him yet is kind of concerning for me. Yeah, my only thoughts is that he must be asking for a little bit much compared to what Colorado is willing to give him. It's a tough situation because of the McKinnon contract and him making like 6 million, 6 point something, when being how good he actually is. But then,
Yeah,
of course,
McKinnon's making 6.3 right now, I think. So Uh, obviously, McKinnon's an elite player, and Rantanen right now he's I think using the Marner contract to kind of leverage negotiations. He's comparing himself to a player like Marner, and obviously he's really good. But I just don't think the same salary cap layout will happen in Colorado like it did in Toronto. The difference is there obviously all of Toronto's top forwards there are making around $11 million. Those three guys, so it was a lot easier for Marner to negotiate his way into that. That's why I think Joe Sakic is being a little more a little more tight with his money there with Rantanen. I think they were offering him slightly under 9 million, and Rantanen wants closer to 10 and a half, 11. So there's still a gap there that they're trying to figure out. I would imagine the Avalanche are going to get him signed. He's obviously a massive part of that team. They had one of the best lines in hockey last year, and he was a big part of that. So with all the cap space they have about 15 million available. I can't see him not getting signed at least early into the season.
Yeah, and you don't want to miss too much time, especially with how big of an impact he has with that number one line, of course. I think I foresee perhaps another bridge deal going down here with Ranton as.
Yeah, bridge deals seem to be the theme, and I think that's what a lot of the players are looking for now, knowing that at some point in the relatively near future, I think the salary cap is probably going to increase, which means players are going to be able to make more money, and so I don't blame them. Obviously, they want to get paid, and sometimes bridge deals are a little riskier for the players. If they have an off year or if they get injured, their stock goes down a little bit, and it kind of hurts their ability to make money in the future. So I don't blame a guy like Mitch Marner for asking for money over term. I mean, you'd be crazy not to sign that deal, but at the same time, teams are looking for bridge deals. It's just a matter of finding that common ground between the player and the team.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, yeah, it's just the players are looking to get paid again once the salary cap goes up. So I don't blame them in that regard. Of course, Patrick Laine, that's just a weird situation with the Jets. He just the relationship there seems to be a bit broken because he earlier in the week he was saying that he was not getting playing time with the Jets' big guys, and he didn't like where he was being played in the lineup. And then Paul Maurice tried to calm down the fire, and then Blake Wheeler made some comments in the dressing room. It just seems like a whole big mess there in Winnipeg in terms of Laine, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, it is a messy situation, and I think you know hopefully they'll figure it out. I think they'll certainly figure things out with Kyle Connor. I think Liney's a bit more of a question there. You don't know what he's going to do, whether he's going to hold out, whether he's going to get traded, whether they're going to get him signed. I really don't know. They're in a bit of a tricky situation. Of course, Dustin Bufflin, they just suspended him from the team for not reporting to camp, which was strictly for financial reasons, to get his money off the books until he decides to come back, if he does decide to come back at all. But it's a tricky situation because if they can't really throw that money at Line A and Connor, because in the event that Bufflin does come back, then obviously his contract would go up against the cap again, and if they have already spent that money on those two forwards, then they might not be able to get them back. So they're in a really interesting spot, and I do think they're going to get Kyle Connor locked up. Um, Line A, his future is a little bit more uncertain.
Yeah, say the least. I think everyone can agree that if there is going to be someone that sits out till past the December or gets traded from his RFA rights, I think it will be Line with anyone standing, just because of that fractured relationship it seems to be formed between him and the team as of right now. I haven't heard too much on the Kyle Connor and Matthew Tkachuk fronts, but I assume that those teams will get those guys signed because they are huge players for those teams. And just to follow up on your comment about Dustin Bufflin and relating it back to the Jets, I think if we had recorded our Central Division podcast right now compared to last week there, I think I had them making the playoffs in one of the wild card spots. I don't know that I would now, just based on what I see is unfolding. It just seems like a huge mess there that gonna need some cleaning up in order to make it back into the playoffs. So they got a little bit of a situation on their hands, to say the least.
Yeah, definitely they do. But moving on from that situation in Winnipeg, there's obviously still some other names that we haven't talked about. One big name that we haven't talked about yet is Braden Point, who signed a 3-year deal today worth $6.75 million, an absolute steal for the Tampa Bay Lightning. If you ask me, I was expecting him to get at least 8, which was about the amount of money that they had left. But ultimately, Point decided to go for a bridge deal. What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, yeah, it was surprising seeing that AAV come in at 6.75, especially how good Point has been playing over the last few years. Just looking at cap friendly here, though, I did notice that he he snuck in that little thing that it seems like all the RFAs are sneaking in right now and going into their last year of RFA. His third year on this contract is 9 million, which means that his qualifying offer for the next contract is going to have to be at least $9 million. So he's basically guaranteeing himself a $9 million contract at least after this contract, which I think is good for him and good for the team now, of course, for the next 3 years, only having the 6.75 on the books. But I think both parties have won here, at least in the short term.
Yeah, definitely. And I think even in the long term, I mean, if you look at Braden Point and what he's done, and assuming that he keeps that up over the next couple of years, I think he's absolutely worth $9 million if they end up keeping him around. And no matter what, I think that's an all around good deal for both parties. I just actually just this is very recent, pretty much on the spot live news. I just saw that Braden Point actually is expected to miss at least a little bit at the start of the season. He had
Oh,
hip surgery over the off season, so
interesting.
obviously it's a good thing for them to get him under contract. Hopefully he doesn't miss too much time for Tampa Bay. Obviously they get a lot of forwards that can kind of fill that spot, but they'll definitely miss him at the start of the season.
Interesting. Interesting. Another couple of RFAs that have also gone with the bridge include that we haven't talked about yet. Include our boy from Boston, Brandon Carlo, with a 2-year, $2.85 million contract, and Brock Besser also signed up with Vancouver at a 3-year, $5.875 million deal. Some thoughts on Besser and our boy Carlo, Dave?
Yeah, we'll start with Besser. I think, again, just a team friendly bridge deal. Besser is obviously a fantastic player, a great goal scorer, someone who's had a little bit of injury trouble over the last year, and I think this year coming with Elias Pettersson, who apparently has developed quite a bit over the offseason. People are saying that he's a lot bigger this year, and obviously he lit the league up last year, facing injury problems himself. So I think those two are going to do fantastic this year. I think it's great for the Canucks to have Besser back on board. I think it would have been really bad if he was the one. I don't imagine he would have been the one to hold out, but if that was the case, I think the Canucks offense would have struggled a little bit. So it's great to see that he signed. In regards to Brandon Carlo, again, just another great deal for the Bruins. They seem to get a lot of those, and once again, sticking with the theme, a bridge deal, 2 years at 2.85. I like that deal a lot. I think the Bruins window is only a couple more years anyway, so to have him in at such a low cap hit is really helpful for the team, especially when they're trying to, fit some other guys in. DeBrusque is up next year, Krug is up next year, so this definitely helps the team.
Yeah, I like the Carlo deal quite a bit. Being a Bruins fan, he really stepped up his game last year, especially in the playoffs in that top four role, playing alongside Torrey Krug on the second pairing. So, huge fan of the other big man on the back end for the Bruins. Some another big deal that was a pending RFA for next year actually signed as well over the last week. Thomas Chabot signed a massive 8 million by 8 years for a total of $64 million contract with the Ottawa Senators that kicks in after this season. What do you think on this deal signing early, getting him locked down for 8 by 8?
Well, I think that's huge. I think Shabbat is easily the future in Ottawa, so to get him locked up early was great for the team. I think he's kind of the second coming of Eric Carlson in a way, where he's going to be that guy on the blue line for Ottawa, and he showed last year what he's capable of. So um, I think it's great for him and for the team to get it done nice and early. Then he doesn't have to worry about it. The team doesn't have to worry about it. You just kind of got to focus on playing. So I really like Shabbat. I really like the deal. I think it's fair for both sides. So I think it's obviously a great contract and it's great for the league.
Yeah, and I think it's good for the city of Ottawa to see that they're actually investing some money in their star players. I can easily see Thomas Chabot leading their team in scoring this year as a defenseman. He is their best player, I think, by far. They have a lot of young guys, but of course, Thomas Chabot, with that experience now in the league and a two-way game that he brings, I think the 8 by 8 will age very well for the deal that he's on. So, with that being said, I'm going to talk now a little bit about some trades and trade rumors that have fallen through and potential trades that may be going through. Of course, over the past few weeks, there's been some rumors involving Julius Honka, who asked for a trade out of Dallas. Pending, I think he might be an RFA right now, and he just hasn't really got his chance after being a pretty big part of Finland's World Junior team a couple of years ago. He just hasn't really gotten his chance as a defenseman in the Dallas system, so I think he wants out of there. It was rumored a few nights ago that it was very close to going through for a trade with Montreal, which would send Julius Honka to Montreal and a 1-for-1 trade with Mike McCarron from Montreal, who also hasn't really panned out too well for what they thought he was going to be in Montreal. Then we found out that Mike McCarron actually injured his groin in preseason and will be out for a minimum of 6 weeks. So of course that deal fell through. I don't know who would have won that deal if it did go through. I think Julius Honka may have more upside, but of course that deal is on now on hold for the time being. But I think Honka is still trying to get out of there. The other big deal that apparently has fallen through now is the Justin Falk deal that we talked about here on the podcast a few episodes ago. He was supposed to be going to Anaheim for perhaps Andre Cache, um, and then would be re-upping a deal. Apparently, the Ducks offered him something around 7 million over 7 years, but Falk refused to sign that and just doesn't really want to play with the Ducks. He has them on his no trade list. He would have to waive it to go there, and it doesn't seem like he's very interested in going over to the Ducks now. So as for the time being, he's staying in Carolina, but I wouldn't be surprised to see this guy dealt before or during the season.
Yeah, me too. I think Carolina has an abundance of solid defensemen right now, so I can see why they're shopping him around. But I also don't blame him for not wanting to sign with Anaheim. I mean, he's been a part of Carolina his entire career, if I'm not mistaken. So they've not always been the the best team, and I think he's kind of been through a lot with Carolina in their kind of their down year. So he's not getting any younger. I think he must be in his late 20s now, probably
Yep.
around 29 years old if I was taking a shot in the dark. But I think he's kind of ready to kind of be a part of a winning culture, and Carolina's kind of turning things around now. So I think if he's not going to be staying in Carolina, I don't blame him for maybe wanting to go somewhere that has a chance of finding some success in the next couple of years.
That's a good point. I don't think he wants to bail on the team that he was with through all those losing years. Now that they're finally getting good, to just go back to a team that's somewhat in a rebuild stage. One other thing that I noticed just before recording the podcast was that Edmonton has shown some big interest in Ottawa Senator Jean Gabriel Pageau. I don't know what they'd be offering up for him, but I think they have very big interest in him filling the third line center role behind McDavid, and then perhaps Draisaitl setting the second line, or Nugent Hopkins, which I think would add to their depth. I think he'd be a solid third line forward there. Not, I don't know if he would move the needle at all in terms of making them that much of a better team, but I think he can score some depth goals, so that to have some secondary scoring on that team would definitely not hurt them. Just something I thought I'd bring up, just a note, just to keep your eyes open
Yeah,
for.
and I mean, I obviously again not a huge thing, but I heard rumblings today too that the Oilers were looking to trade defenseman Matt Benning. So he
Mm,
might be a part of that trade too. He looks like he's not going to make the team this year. So rather than waiving him, I think they're looking to move him in a trade. So
interesting,
maybe
interesting.
he may or may not be a piece of that. Obviously, it's just speculation at this point, but we'll see what happens.
Yep. So with that being said, I guess we should dive in a little bit about our Boston Bruins, since this is the What's Bruin podcast. So far, the Bruins during the preseason, I think, are what 1-2 so far, um, losing to New
1-1
Jersey.
and one, I think. Actually, yeah,
Oh, one,
technically.
1-1, yeah.
Yeah.
And oh yeah, they lost in overtime that first game against Jack Hughes and the New
Actually,
Jersey
no,
Devils.
didn't. Yeah, they did. So they're actually 1-0 and two then, because I think they lost in overtime to Chicago as well.
Oh yeah. But one theme that the Bruins have definitely been showing is giving the younger guys, some of the guys that may be of the future, or some of the guys that are on the bubble, a lot of playing time so far during this preseason. A lot of the veteran guys haven't even stepped on the ice in a preseason game yet. Of course, McAvoy and Carlo getting their first taste the other night against Chicago, but there's been a lot of young forwards, young defensemen in the lineups, and I think some notes to take from that. I think they're really trying to push for Anders Bjork again to be on that third line with Heinen and Coyle. They've really been testing that out, and of course, they're really hoping that Kuhlman can take another step on that second line. They're also taking long looks at guys like Studnicka and Vakanainen, of course, on the back end. And one guy that's really, really impressed me is that Kaiser in Nets, who's supposed to be the next backup behind Rask and perhaps the starter of the future. He's been playing very, very good in both appearances he's made in the preseason. He
Yeah,
looks very good.
I've heard really good things about him as well, and he played for Team USA's World Junior team. I don't think it was. Maybe it was last year. He was the backup for Team USA. I can't remember who started, but also their starter was really good. So that doesn't necessarily mean that he's not not as good as a goaltender because he was backing them up. But he was on that World Junior roster, and that's kind of when he caught my eye, and I started paying a bit more attention to him. Obviously, the Bruins haven't aside from him haven't got a whole lot in terms of goaltending prospects. Obviously, they picked Subban up a couple of years ago, and that didn't work out. And Dan Vladar doesn't seem to be working out that well. So I'm excited to see that they have a good goaltending prospect. Hopefully, he works out because obviously solid goaltending is hard to come by.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. But yeah, I think it's good that they're getting some eyes on these young guys, getting them a little bit accustomed to an NHL style game because as you know, the Bruins are aging and they played a lot of hockey last year, so there's potential for some injuries or some things going on during this season, which may cause them having to call up some of these guys, and the experience is only going to help them. So it'll be interesting to see how much ice time they do get with the big club this year, and if they can make an impact and stay up. So that'd be kind of cool. Of that I think they do have a few promising prospects that could make the step either this year or maybe in the next year.
Yeah, they definitely do, and I think they need some guys to step up and fill a few holes in the lineup. Second line winger, obviously we talked about Carson Kuhlman. Third line winger, or even third line centerman position, depending on where Coyle is this year. There's certainly spots. There's positions available, and we're kind of looking for that guy that's going to step up and take them. Of course, the Bruins tonight, as we mentioned, recording this on the 23rd of September, the Bruins are in preseason action again tonight against the Philadelphia Flyers, where we're actually going to get a look at some of the veteran guys who haven't had much action yet. The Bruins announced today that Marchand, Pasternak, DeBrusk, Krejci, even Chara, Corrali, Backus, Wagner. A lot of guys are going to be playing tonight. A couple of those guys, obviously, in their first games. Tuukka Rask also will be playing. That should be a fun game to watch. They
Yeah, that's
have
exciting.
they have Charlie Coyle right now centering the first line with Pasternak and Marchand. Obviously, Coyle's been having a really strong preseason so far, so that should be fun to watch. Additionally, the Bruins coach Bruce Cassidy did say that obviously it's been no secret that Bergeron has been dealing with a bit of a nagging injury over the summer, but he did confirm that Bergeron will be playing in at least one preseason game. He's expected to play on Saturday night.
Yeah, it'll be good to see some of these veteran guys hopefully shake out some cobwebs before the start of the season and hopefully start the season strong. Hopefully not have a stumble out of the gate after a long season last year. As of what you said on Coyle, I didn't catch the game against Chicago. I don't know if he even played in that game, but I did watch their game against Philadelphia, and he looked like the best player on the ice. And that was being said with players like Giroux and Couturier being in the lineup for Philly. Coyle looked absolutely unreal. He was dominating the puck all night. His line with Bjork and Heinen were all over the ice, all over the power play, killing penalties. It was great to see, and hopefully he can continue that into the regular season as well because I think he was a great pickup for them last year at the deadline.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it's going to be great if Charlie Coyle can, whether he's playing on the third line or the second line. I think it's going to be huge to get that additional goal scoring and some size and grit as well. Personally, I actually, depending on how he plays, I would very much like to see him play on the second line. I think the Bruins have some pretty solid depth at center ice where they can afford to throw someone else in the center ice position on the third line. I think Charlie Coyle has the skill to play on a second line. Um, right now, the guys that he might be playing with on the third line, I mean, I don't want to speak too soon, but I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, Heinen has some skill. I really liked last year when he was playing with Johansson, but I think Coyle's the kind of guy where if he has some help on his wing, or sorry, on his line, I think he could really produce. So I think it'd be kind of a shame if you end up burying him on the third line with like Backus or something. I
Oh,
think it'd be a bit of a waste. So I wouldn't mind seeing him play on the wing with Krejci and DeBrusque.
yeah, that's true. I wouldn't mind seeing him on a scoring third line either. If Heinen and Bjork can take some steps this year. Um, that being said, I guess that's all there is to discuss as of right now on the Bruins. Of course, they opened their season on I think October 3rd.
Yep, they're playing the Dallas Stars on October
Yeah,
3rd.
your Stanley Cup predicted team. Which reminds me, I forgot to make my Stanley Cup prediction for the preseason before the season starts. And I was thinking about it a bit the other day, and I was like, who do I want to pick? I don't want to pick the Bruins. They want to be a homer. I don't want to pick Tampa because that's just too obvious of a pick. And I think after some thought, I narrowed it down to two teams. They were Washington and Nashville, who I
I
thought
knew
was
you were
going to
going to
win.
say Nashville. Yeah,
I think I'm going to go with OV getting his second cup as my prediction. Really
hmm.
like the team, and I think they can get things done as long as Holtby continues to play Holtby like.
Yeah. Washington's definitely a good pick. I think they're easily the best team in the Metropolitan Division.
Yep,
They were bested by the Hurricanes last year, but um, I think for the most part, if they can find their composure a little bit and their big guys can step up and play well and everything, I think I could definitely see them at least in the conference finals this year.
exactly. In terms of some housekeeping for the podcast itself, I think moving forward into the regular season, we'll have a more schedule or a more precise schedule for each episode. Of course, we'll be going over things that happened around the league, some big moments, some big games, some big scores, some different games that we watched throughout the week that we can discuss, and then of course updating you weekly on the Bruins and what's been happening around the Bruins and our thoughts on how they've been playing and who needs to step up or who's been playing very well. Of course, sections of the podcast, like the Pro Line picks and the Backus tracker, will be returning to the What's Brewing podcast. So the Pro Line picks, I think this year, with us uploading the podcast more frequently, we will just be predicting some games throughout the week, maybe a few games each night, so that you can take a look at our thoughts and what we think. And of course, we'll be predicting each and every Bruins game that we can, and hopefully picking the Bruins to win for the majority of them, as long as they're playing some significant hockey. And of course, with the Backus tracker, we'll just keep you updated on David Backus. It's more so of a funny section of the podcast, just to see how that $6 million man is doing. And I wonder if he's still 10 pounds down or if he's any more weight down going into the season.
Yeah, I have a feeling that the Backus tracker this year is last year. It was a lot of saying how he didn't get any points last night. I have a funny feeling this year it's going to be there's going to be a lot more saying he wasn't in the lineup
Yeah,
than it was last year. So, but yeah, of course we will keep you updated on the $6 million man himself, David Backus. Obviously, everyone needs to know what's going on with him night in and night out. So we'll keep you up to date on that.
yeah, for sure. And to finish this podcast out today, I think everyone knows it's fantasy hockey season now. Just before the regular season, everyone's getting their drafts in and their picks. I think you already had one of your fantasy pools begin the other night. So, Dave, a question for you. Um, who do you have on your sleeper list? You don't want to pick a perhaps Anders Bjork from like I did a couple of years ago, thinking he was playing with Bergeron and Marchand that did not pan out, or you picking Ty Ratty last year, thinking he was playing with McDavid, who ended up not playing very many games. But who do you have? Give me two names, maybe. Who you'd have in a deep sleeper from like maybe a deep draft that would go a little bit further than your typical few person draft.
Yeah, well, for me, the first one that comes to mind is Victor Olofsson from the Buffalo Sabres. Last year, I believe he had about, I think it was 6 points in 4 games. Right now, he's penciled in to play with Jeff Skinner and Jack Eichel on the top line for the Buffalo Sabres. He looked really good the other night. I watched a game where he was playing, the Sabres were playing against the Leafs. He had 2 goals in that game, including the game winner. He looked sharp. I think he's going to have another, or I guess I shouldn't say another good season. He only played 6 games, but I think he's due for a good season this year. Even though he did get absolutely rocked into the bench by
I
Jake Muzzin, but I'm sure he
did
just
see
shook
that.
that
Yeah.
one off and came out and scored a goal in his next shift or a couple shifts later. So I would say Olofsson is a good pick if you're willing to take a little bit of a risk. Obviously, you don't know what's going to happen with him. Another pick I would say is Jonas Donskoy. I thought
Mm.
about Jonas Donskoy, and he played relatively well with the San Jose Sharks, and he was playing at a bit more of a depth scoring position. I believe he was playing on the San Jose Sharks third line. I think he had close to 40 points on the Sharks third line. This year he's going to be playing. He's going to be playing in Colorado. I believe they have him penciled in on the second line with Nazem Kadri, who I think also is going to have a great season. He might get some power play time as well. I think he's going to be fitting into a bit more of a scorer's position this year, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Donskoy put up 50 points.
Yeah, that'd be very cool. Some names that I have for on defense that I expect to get a few more points this year include maybe a bit of Josh Morrissey, who'll probably be quarterbacking that power play for Winnipeg this year with some of the key departures on the back end there. Um, just getting touches on that power play is probably going to be free assists for him in terms of playing with Shifley, Connor, Wheeler, maybe Line A. It's probably going to be some free points in terms of him. I also expect Miro Heiskanen from Dallas to take a huge step this year. I know you're high on Heiskanen as well. I think he's going to make a huge step. He played amazing last year as a rookie, and he can only get better. And one of my sleepers, I've mentioned him before, Philip Roenick from the Detroit Red Wings, potentially quarterbacking Detroit Red Wings power play, played in 46 games last year for the Red Wings, notching 23 points, and he also played very, very well at the World Championships for the Czech Republic, I believe. And I think he's due for a good step, and I think he will be quarterbacking that power play. And someone's got to get points for Detroit, right? So he's someone that I'd be looking at in a deep, deep draft if you're willing to take someone with a little bit of risk, but not too much because you're drafting him late in the draft, and um, maybe have some upside, maybe win you some categories if that's the type of pool you're in, or we give you some extra points that you weren't expecting.
Yeah, for sure. And you brought up kind of power play quarterbacks, and I wouldn't say this is so much of a sleeper pick as much as I think he's going to do even better this year. Jacob Truba, he's actually a guy that I picked up in my hockey pool. He had 50 points last year. Of course, he was playing on a very strong power play in Winnipeg with a lot of big offensive guys, but he's in New York this year. I think he's going to be their guy again. In New York, and he's going to be passing the puck around with guys like Zibanejad, Panarin, Kako. So I think there's going to be no shortage of goal scoring on that power play as well. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him have even more than 50 points this year. So, like I said, not really a sleeper pick, but another guy that I was keeping an eye on. And I was glad to grab.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for the What's Brewing podcast here today. I guess the next episode we do will be either just before the regular season or just as the regular season is beginning. So that's exciting, exciting news, and hopefully we'll have a lot more to talk about come then. And until then, good luck to everyone in their fantasy pools that are doing them, and enjoy the rest of the preseason because the regular season is coming.
Yep, it's just around the corner. Looking forward to getting a bit more of an organized schedule when the season kicks off. But until then, unless some crazy happenings occur, we'll be talking to you right before the season starts, or right as the season starts. Hopefully, with a few more RFA signing announcements. But until then, thank you very much for tuning in to this episode of the What's Bruin podcast.